Good day everyone, Dr. Blob here. So, as of now, all mission stages for Chapter 11 are now out. And perhaps this was one of the better structured chapters along. I mean, the problem I had with the previous chapter was that the story seemed to be an afterthought. Kinda like, this is the enemies, you have to fight them, don't think about it. Chapter 11 on the other hand seems to have made his mission to fix that thing. Not only explaining why we are here, but also giving us the story of Victoria, how they come to lose their king, and how they have been faring since then. And while I love the job they did this time around, this video will not focus on it. I mean, it is a very good story, and personally I don't want to spoil it. Everyone should be able to enjoy it. What I want to focus on are other bits of trivia and information that, while not central to the plot, it gives us a bigger picture of not only the events, but also of all of Terra. So, that's what this video will be about. I will avoid spoilers as much as possible, as I will be focusing more in the information rather than the events. So, let's start with what I think is the biggest blunder I have made so far. At first I thought that, because of this image, tanks will be introduced in Terra. And that's because tanks don't exist there. Don't get me wrong, armored vehicles of many kinds do exist. Heck, we got to see quite a variety from this chapter alone. And even some that are called tanks themselves, but none of which we consider them to be regular tanks. That is, with a simple cannon on top of the vehicle. At first I thought this was because they wouldn't be as useful in Terra. If you want to siege another mobile city, you bring your own city, or the land battle cruisers Victoria is unknown about. There is no point in bringing a tank. Not to mention that cannons seem to be way too big or way too complicated to be placed in a vehicle. Again, seen in the models we got to see in this event, as they clearly are anything but simple. And regarding my thought about the possibility of them becoming a thing in Terra, well, that image turned out to be the past. Stainless past to be exact. As he was trying to create something to fight the Sarkas with. But said project was abandoned shortly after. So, we will never know if that was an actual tank or even if it worked. So as for now, tanks, at least the ones we know as tanks, don't exist in Terra. Next point. Gaul's fall was less than 100 years ago. I thought this event would have happened hundreds of years ago, but no, it was in less than a lifetime ago, with evidence pointed out that not only was it that long ago, but also that there were a lot of survivors from Gaul, which explains why there are still factions trying to revive the country. After all, if it wasn't as long as thought, then the love for the country still burns in some of their survivors. Also, not exactly explained, but if Fobur are indeed related to Gaul, and Zarya's family comes from it, that kind of explains why her dad was so strict with her, because he will still remember some of the old country, and how the country was defeated, which in turn, a bit of a reach, but will explain why he tried to make her as strong as possible. Not to revive the country, but to implant the idea that only the strongest are able to survive in Terra. So yeah, indirectly, we got an answer to that. Now to see if these survivors do in fact end up created another country. Also related to that fact, we finally got the first confirmation about the different lifespans in Terra. Specifically, that of Sarkas. Theresis not only was alive when Gaul fell, it was alive when Gaul and other countries invaded Castle, meaning he has been around for at least hundreds of years, and he still looks to be in his 30s. That is one insane lifespan. So yeah, now we know that Sarkas can live for a very, very long time. And keep it on live with the fantasy setting, We also get to know that siege lions are not there, at least not in the regular sense. They are treated more like magical beings than actual creatures, which we have also seen before in Eia's lamps, which means that, well, maybe what we consider to be real animals are the fantastic creatures in Thera, which will make sense considering everything. So yeah, technically, they are not her pets, they are her stands. Another point to notice regarding how much they focus developing the story. We got to see how the Knights of the Tower were founded, how did they blossom in Victoria, and how sad their end was after the king's death. This is something I really love when they take their time to explain these sort of things. I gonna admit, Arknights hasn't been the best at this kind of development, but the fact that they put so much effort this time around is what makes me believe that they are really looking forward to develop even more this story. So yeah, now we know why Dagda is so determined to bring back the Knights of old. Speaking of Knights, during the event we are told that Columbia and Lytanian are interested in acquiring Steam Knights, which will explain certain development, specifically how Saria mentioned that the armors she saw before were nowhere as developed as seen in Dorothy's vision, which means that Grimes managed to get hands in something which accelerated the development. Now we know what it was. While we didn't see it in this story, Rhine Labs might have managed to get their hands in a Steam Knight, which in turn was reverse engineered into created the servo armors seen in the event. For Lytanian part, we know they are also interested in creating their own automata, though in their case they went with the self-propelling kind, which also explain why will they eventually go and create this little only time will tell if the Steam Knights are truly gone or if they will return. Personally, I hope they do. They are sick as fuck. Like seriously, that wasn't even inspired by Gundam. That was a medieval Gundam, lightsaber and all. I would love to see them back. Next point. If Victorians loved the crown so much, why nobody tried to bring back the kings? Why did Siege, and to a certain degree Reed, needed to be in hiding for so long? Well, now we know. The reason the king was dethroned was because he was trying to reel in the nobles, trying to make them spend less and cooperate more with the country. The coup wasn't some sort of betrayal or fight for power, they were just protecting their own interest. Very in line with the other stories we have seen so far, about the evils of capitalism and whatnot, and also explaining why the Victorians didn't try to bring back the royalty. And that's because after the king was dethroned, the lords starting to spread the story that it was the king's spending on war what was causing the country to get poorer, making him the bad guy of the story. Pretty much what happened here, just not as obvious, and with a longer time for the story to settle in. It was obvious not everyone believed these stories, thus giving room to the Salvation Corps to rise eventually. Like I said, I really love how these little things go, giving us the whole picture. Speaking of which, we now have the reason why Rhodes Island is in Victoria. Granted, we lost someone to Dublin's forces, but no, Dublin isn't even shown in this event, meaning that we are not here for revenge. The reason Rhodes, and specifically Amiya, is here is to stop the Sarkas. Not out of love for Londinium, but actually to keep the Sarkas safe. If this conflict is let to keep going, they will end up becoming Terra's punching bag once more, giving us a reason as to why we are here. Speaking of which, we finally got confirmation. The theory was right. Castle and the Sarkas are based on Hebrew Jerusalem. Each and every one of us who could see the similarities are reveling in the confirmation. If only we could get this kind of information more often. Speaking of stories, Paprika will have more prominence than expected. As a matter of fact, Totter also is part of the story. I think this is the first time we got all the characters involved in the story in a very long time. Like, there's a reason they're here. And while we can recruit Paprika now, her story will be very important in the following chapters. I'm not saying she's gonna be the center of it, but the things she's gonna witness are gonna be very, very important. And finally, Liz is without a doubt the more useful medic for this chapter. But I found it interesting because in this chapter we also get a bit of her story. Kind of a didactic way to say, yes, she is important, and now you can make use of her in story. I mean, we all know she's been useful ever since Tallulah. But making use of the character who didn't appear that much in this story, yet in a very subtle way remind you that, hey, she's still here and she's still important, I think that was a very brilliant move. All in all, I think that chapter 11 is without a doubt one of the best written ones so far. It is long, but it didn't felt that long. All the information given mattered. Even the small things that we saw here, they have their own weight. It wasn't perfect, but I truly believe this is the best way to portray the story. Obviously my word is in law. So what do you think? Do you think this chapter was better handled? Or would you like to have done things differently? Be sure to comment down below. I for once I really love to have this kind of information to dive into, because it gives me more information about the world as a whole, which, as a lore master, can make me happier. But for now, this will have to do. And this has been Dr. Blob, thanking you all for your time, and humbly asking for a like, share and subscribe. Because when I was distracted I noticed that we are getting closer to 1000. That's one of the milestones I'm really looking forward to. And it's thanks to each and every one of you that I'm making it possible. So, stay healthy everyone.